Hi, and welcome to Presenting for Engineers. This is part 3, the style you own. If you haven't watched the previous videos, please go ahead so that you have an understanding of what this entire thing is about. But anyway, the style you own is about the style and the practice that you do before you go into presentations. Presenting for Engineers, this series of videos is based off of a workshop that I gave to my school community in 2021. So I'm doing this in a sort of one-take style. So, some things might not quite make sense until you actually watch the previous video. If you already have, welcome back. And let's start with part 3. Part 3, the style you own. So, once again, there's always going to be your MIT. Then we'll have one tool for practicing about practice and a second tool for developing your own sense of style and what steps you can do if you need to change it. So the most important thing in this section is confidence is not required. Now that might sound a bit strange. Like, what do you mean? Style is about confidence. Presenting is about confidence, but I assure you it is not. Right? Confidence is a thing that it is an emergent pattern, just like how pointillism eventually gives rise to, in this case, Van Hoff's self-portrait. So remember when we talked about the 4 stages of competence and how you achieve unconscious competence, the highest level of skill in something. In reality, right, most people are kind of, this is what we perceive as confidence, but in reality, most of us are here. The people who are really good are consciously competent, which means they're constantly working to make sure that, everything is being done right. And all of that, achieving all of that looks like confidence. But really, they are just as scared and terrified and and panicking as much as everyone else. Most confident people are here, right? So the curse of competence is that people tend to mistake your preparation and experience as confidence or talent. In reality, it's like the duck analogy where ducks look very calm above water, but underneath they're just frantically paddling. That is what confidence is. So confidence is not required. And if you find that you have a lack of confidence, you can replace it with conviction. Because when you deliver, what makes you not very confident about your ideas, what is this fear of judgment and failure in your presentation. But if you recognize that you are giving value to the world, if you're convicted, if you're not convicted, if you have conviction in your idea and you recognize that it is good that you are delivering this idea to the world, then I find that helps shake off a bit of the fear of judgment and failure, right? There's no shame in making the world a better place. So why would you be ashamed of, giving your presentation? Anyway, tool 1, the tool that I'm going to give you, which I feel is actually the most important tool in this section, is that you need to practice in the right way if you want to give a good presentation. And the reason for that is because practice is like an iceberg. In reality, there's actually a lot more underneath to practice rather than the stuff that you think of as practice, right? I've been thinking about this for quite some time, but I find that practice has many levels, right? You have mulling. You mull over the topic, you think about it, iterations, where you start coming up with your individual lines for certain slides. Individual practice, which is typically what we start to consider as practice, where we sit down, we go through all the content at one shot, blah, blah, blah. And eventually group practice, where we, grab our friends for a presentation and then we say, hey, let's do a run through. And that is group practice. And that's a lot of practice, right? And to help you understand this whole idea of practice is, I want you to do this exercise I call again and again. So back in the start, I asked you to pick up a rubber duck. This was, I think, all the way in the prelude. If you can remember your rant, let's practice it, right? The goal is that after we do this a few times, if we do it in the right way, you'll find that it's much easier to deliver the rant as if it were a proper presentation, right? If you can't find the content, use the starter the starter I have at the bottom, which is I wish more people took a topic of your choice seriously. If what I need you to do now is I want you to spend 1 minute to think about the points, about the things that make you angry, right? And if you need to write down key ideas, go ahead. But just spend exactly 1 minute on that, right? And that is also a form of practice that helps you better understand yourself, better understand the presentation topic, right? Your 1 minute, go ahead, pause the video. If not, we'll just carry on. Right. And that is mulling. That is the first kind of practice that people tend to ignore, which is thinking about the topic. If you remember at the start, we used the quality of a presentation is a function of K, P, and T. And K is knowledge. And if you are going to understand, if you're going to deeply, genuinely understand the topic of your presentation, you have to think about it. So it can take the form of like you're sitting in a bus and then you think about the presentation. What's important? What's the critical key points to understand this topic? Thinking about it in advance makes it a lot easier to pull out all this understanding in the future when you need to practice like verbally or in person or as a whole, So the second kind of practice, which I think people often overlook, is testing the parts individually. When you deliver certain ideas, you find that like some people have a certain way of delivering an idea in such a nice lovely manner, right? And it's easy to say that it's because they're talented. It could also be that all this while they've been trying out different ways of expressing that one particular idea that they've been thinking about for a while that lets them deliver it effectively. So we have to test that. This is something that you practice when it comes to like critical points, critical ideas. You have to practice delivering them verbally in different ways and you find which one sticks the best. And we're going to take that and we're going to do that as part of our exercise. It's going to be another 1 minute, right? But remember the points, the important parts of your angry rant, right? I want you to say them out and it's just the key points, but find a way to deliver them in the most impactful, most powerful way that you can. Of course, I'm going to assume that you've paused the video, you've done that, whatnot, blah, blah. We're going to continue, right? The third kind of practice is individual practice. This is your full runs with timing, doing the entire slide, blah, blah. You're actually going to save a lot of time on individual practice if you've been thinking about the content way beforehand, if you've been doing iterations way beforehand, because in the end, individual practice is not about synthesizing the ideas on the spot, but instead you're really just assembling the ideas that you already have prepared. And this is why this iceberg model of practice is effective, because your individual practice is the obvious part of the iceberg, but the stuff underneath that really keeps it afloat is unseen. And what this does, it means that when eventually you're going to run like individual practices, you don't have to spend so much time and it's very efficient. So you got to spend time anyway. Why not make it more efficient? Why not spend the time when you're traveling, when you're doing something random, when you're on the toilet or whatever? You start thinking about your presentation then, and that way it saves you time in the future. All right. Of course, group practice, this is what people see, when people come together and it's like, we're all going to practice. And then it becomes very obvious, which people did practice on their own and which people did not. Yeah. So this is the fourth kind of practice. And like at this point, most of y'all are experienced with this. So I'm not going to go into that. Right. Now, what I feel is like the most ideal weightage of this iceberg of practice is that you want to have a lot of internal practicing, a lot of mulling, a lot of iterations, right? Doing a lot of things on your own before you finally come about to do your individual practice and then you do your group practice, right? That way, the visible parts of your practice, the individual and group ones, which take a lot of time, you can cut down on that because in a way, you're just assembling based off of the ideas that you already have. An analogy to help you better understand this is that of a computer, right? If all your knowledge is in your drive, as you mull, you're essentially pulling them into your RAM so that eventually when you think about it, you can pull them into your cache at the exact point that you start to do your individual practice. So all the knowledge that you need for that presentation is already in your RAM, and it's a lot faster to pull towards your CPU, right? And the cache is the ones that you're immediately working on when you're doing your practices. All the mulling and iteration is equivalent to pulling information out of your own internal hard drive, so you have it at the ready when you are going to do your presentation, your practices, be they individual or group, right? So that's one way of thinking about it. Now, I'd like you to do again and again and again. We're going to do your run one last time, right? Do one full run and realize how much it has changed just because you've thought about critical points, just because you've said the critical points in a few ways, right? This is the assembly part of your individual practice. You're pulling together your information, right? So go ahead, pause the video, and I'm going to assume that you are done. All right, I'm going to assume that you are done. So let's go ahead and continue with this workshop. The second tool that I'm going to give you is on developing your style. Now, this one's a bit abstract. I don't really know how to help you with this because it's a very major case of your mileage may vary. But this is a tool that I use to help nudge myself when I need to switch between different kinds of styles. The first thing is that I need you to understand is that ideally we keep your presentation style as true to yourself as possible, because it's harder to fabricate a different style from what is natural to you. And so it's a lot easier if it's true. But sometimes, I understand it's not appropriate for the situation. It's not what you want to show to the world. That's fine, but it's going to be a slow process and it might be a bit more challenging to create it. Right. But testing your style, to test your style, you can sort of use this thing I call the big D. And it's these 3 Ds, which is define, deploy, determine. And what does that mean? So define is that I need you to understand what that style is, right? Deploy is that how am I going to do it? And determine is like you measure, okay, does that work, right? Do I need to tweak my method of deployment? My style is that I tend to be more irreverent, a bit flamboyant in my presentations. Maybe not this one, right? Now, how do I deploy that? How does that manifest? Well, I insert memes and jokes. I have a lot of gestures. I'm always moving. I have a lot of energy. And of course, determine, does that work? Well, for me, my measure is whether I enjoyed it, because presentations are meant to be fun. But for you, it can also be based on how you feel after the presentation. Did you deliver it in a way that has very few errors, or do you deliver in a way that is smooth? And then of course you go back and look at how you deploy your style, and you try again, and try again. This is a very slow, painful process of defining who you are and changing your habits. So it's going to be difficult if you don't, it's going to be difficult, but I'm sure it will pay off in the future. Yeah, so take this as a long-term project. Don't have to do it now. Generally you'll find a style that works for you, and I hope it serves you well. Anyway, one more thing. Oh yes, so in group presentations, one of the bigger challenges that people have is, how do I deal with everyone having different styles of presenting? The fact of the matter is that you're going to have, different parts of the presentation are going to require different styles. Usually the front and the end tend to be more aspirational. The middle parts need to be more technical. So rather than trying to shoehorn individual styles into a certain group presentation style, it's better to fit the right kind of people to the right kind of spots. And you, of course, that really depends on who you have, lah. Yeah, it goes back to presenting is easier if you're doing it true to yourself. You're doing it true to your own style. So apply that here. It's more of fitting people into the right place rather than carving them into the into the right shape for that presentation. Okay. These are some things that you can tweak and change as part of developing your style, as part of your deploy phase, right? You can change your gestures, how large they are, how rampant and how wild they are, your tempo. This is more of the speed. Pacing, it's the rhythm, the da-da. And pacing, of course, in the other sense, which is to walk around. How much do you walk? How much do you move? For me, I'm very mobile. There's a lot of kinetic energy in my presentations because that's just my style, right? Vocabulary. What kinds of words do you use? Do you use big words? Do you use a lot of technical words? Do you use a lot of words that imply aspirations and emotions? That's something that you can choose, something that you can tailor for your presentation. And of course, in a more less critical to like presenting content, but more of like, the whole presentation of yourself as well, is your attire and the colors that you use in your slides. And for colors in particular, like you want to use colors that are relevant to your topic. So, if like you're presenting on behalf of a company, please use corporate colors, that kind of thing. Or if you are doing this as part of like a series of presentations for a project, you want to use the same color schemes to give that sense of unity. So all these are things that you can tweak as part of your deploy phase. With that, we've come to the end of part 3, the style you own. The most important thing is that confidence is not required for good presenting. Everything you need is there. You just need to, what we think of as confidence is really just someone who is actually pulling on all levers and twisting all the dials at the right time, right? And confidence, like genuine confidence that comes afterwards, that one comes from a lot of practice and experience. So you can do it as long as you do things right. Right, you don't have to be confident to give a good presentation. You just need to cover the right bases, right? And one of the tools that you can use to cover bases correctly is to practice well. Because if you don't do your practice, people are, it's going to show in your presentation. It's not going to look good. So you want to practice perfectly. And what I have shared with you is that you want to present it in a way, you want to practice in a way that a lot of stuff is being done before you actually start like doing your run-throughs by yourself or with your group. That way you actually develop a very genuine, deep understanding of the topic, and you frame your ideas in a way that is is cool and snazzy, and it will catch attention. So practice in the right way so that you can deliver it in the right way. The second tool I gave you is taking a sort of methodical approach to developing your style in presenting, and using different tools and levers like your attire, the rhythm of your speech, the tempo of your speech, whether you're moving around. All these are little dials that you can turn to fine-tune your style to yourself or to a certain target style that you're trying to achieve. So with these two tools, you can slowly shift the way that you present in a way that you enjoy or that you desire. With that, we've come to the end of the content for presenting for engineers. We'll go for a quick recap, and then we will end this workshop. So with that, welcome to the recap of presenting for engineers. All right, we'll just go through the key points that we have today so that you remember them, right? And hopefully they'll be useful to you. You'll be able to put them into action, and this will make you a better presenter in the future. Anyway, in part one, the stuff you say, the most important thing that you need to remember is that you're always fishing for attention. Convince your audience to pay attention to you because it's so precious that they pay attention to you, right? It's so important that they're listening. And how you do that, how you make it easier for them to pay attention is, one, you need to deliver it in the way that they want you to. And two, you can use these tools to explain it like they're 5 and use story structures to keep their attention on you and on the presentation. It also makes it easier for them to absorb the idea. And, since the presentation is about conveying an idea, then it really just makes the quality of your presentation even better. In part 2, the slides you show, our most important thing is to own your presentation. No matter what you do with your slides and props and tools, you want to be the center of your presentation. 3 tools that I find help you deliver to make the quality of your slides better, to make the quality of your props better, is that you want to do less is more. You don't want things that are too distracting. You want to just focus on the important points. And 2, you want to attract, not distract. Show that you've put in effort into the slides, but not in a way that is garish, loud, and distracting. Instead, focus them on what's important, but also subtly hint to them that, hey, I've put a lot of effort into this, and I care because I want you to have a good presentation. And of course, The last rule that I gave you is to pilfer. Do not be satisfied with defaults and boring standard stuff, but to find something that really fits your own style, to go out there and select, the kind of images, the kinds of fonts and styles and templates and animations that best suit you, right? Don't be satisfied with just like the boring basic stuff. And the good thing is that you can reuse these things that you've pilfered in future presentations to help immediately enhance the quality of your presentation. In part 3, I talked about the style you own. The most important thing is that, confidence for presenting is not required. Confidence is not required because often confidence is really just someone who is competent and they are doing everything behind the scenes, panicking, with this flurry of activity just to make things work out fine. And eventually, if you do that enough, that's when you start to develop confidence as you expect it, as you know it. The 2 tools that I gave you to achieve this sense of style, this sense of confidence, is 1, to do the right kind of practice, to do it in a way that is efficient by sending most of the practicing into a sort of in a sort of unconscious or a more convenient manner, right? And instead, preparing all this understanding and practice beforehand before you actually start doing your individual practices, running through your slides, or group practices with your group mates in a presentation. So that way, your practice is much higher quality and also a lot shorter, a lot more efficient. Second part, I talked about developing your style in a methodical manner and slowly tweaking the different dials so that you find the style that you are, 1, either comfortable with, or 2, the style that you desire, that you're aiming for. Right? It's a slow, long process that, we all have to work on, but it'll pay off in the end. At the start, I talked about the hard truths to keep you going. If you don't remember the content, that's fine. But what's important is that you have the right mindset required to go about doing presentations for the long run, the rest of your life. The most important thing, I cannot stress this enough, is that knowledge and practice beats talent. Don't beat yourself up if you're like, this person's very talented. No, they might have practiced a lot more than you, right? And you can reach that level. You can reach the level that you desire if you have the right kind of knowledge and enough kind of knowledge and the correct amount of practice to make up for it. Okay? Of course, sometimes, no matter how much you do, sometimes your presentations will mess up. That's okay. Forgive yourself, try again. And also remember that if you're going to be doing a lot of presentations for the rest of your life, so you got to pick your battles and not invest 100% of your effort into it every time, because that's a very easy way to burn out. Your end game is you want to win the war. You want to achieve your 97 decent presentations, 2 mess up presentations, and that 1 exemplary presentation that you remember for the rest of your life. With that, I'm going to give you a little bit of homework because, practical stuff is good. I want you to take the knowledge that you have acquired in this workshop and review it and review an old presentation, and see whether you can improve it. You don't have to. But I think it's good. It helps you see how much you've grown, how much you've learned, and it also helps you achieve a deeper sense of a deeper understanding of the concept that I have shared in this video. Of course, I can't be asking you to do work without me offering a buy-in, and this is my buy-in, right? Which is, if you're going to if you're going to invest effort into improving your sense of your own presentations, then I'll be here to help you out. Contact me as in whatever way that you desire, right? And I'll be happy to give you ideas, give you advice, give you to be a sort of sounding board for your presentations. But of course, don't take up all my time. I have the rest of my life to live. Right. With that, we've come to the end of Presenting for Engineers. This is a workshop that I did for my university back in 2021. That link is probably not active, so don't fill it. I hope you've found the content in this video useful, this video series useful, and let me know what you think down in the comments, or contact me directly, whatever. Right. With that, bye.